Future-Proof Knowledge Podcast. Mind unlocked. With every episode we cast. Real talk, real tools. Wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky. FPK, Future-Proof Knowledge Podcast.
Future-Proof Knowledge Podcast, episode 19, ladies and gentlemen. We are here and I'm joined by the dynamic duo, Jason Mills and Olive Hickmott. I hope you are both keeping well. This week, before we get into the introductions, tell us how you're doing. Olive, you brought a fantastic conversation to the table, called supporting and enabling neurodiverse families. So how can we support those families who are maybe just finding out that there is neurodiversity within the family, or who are maybe finding things difficult? So we're going to try and come up with some practical examples and ideas that they can use at home. But before we get into all that, Olive, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, thank you. I'm having a bit of a technology issue, but I'm not going to discuss that now.
You were very honest with us beforehand. You were like, no, it's been a disaster. So our job after this call is to help Olive sort this stuff out.
I think I've got a gremlin.
You've got a gremlin. Actually, if in a coaching term, we all have a gremlin, Olive. And the gremlin is the thing that sits on our shoulder and tells us all the negative stuff. So but we'll put that to the side for the next hour and we'll delve into the conversation. And Jay Sean, how are you doing this fine evening for us, morning for you?
Oh, it's an excellent overcast morning here on the coast of Seaside, Oregon, but we are here and ready to roll.
We are here and ready to roll. And so, as I said, well, actually, before we even get into it, Olive did come on and wonder, should she be wearing a woolly hat? Because I'm wearing my famed Chicago Bears hat, and Jay Sean has got his hood up. But no, Olive, you look perfect just as you are. But I did think it was very important. I've been a fan of the Chicago Bears since the mid-'80s, and they have been terrible since the mid-'80s pretty much. But we are sitting top of the conference, so I am very happy at the moment. So that's why I thought it was important for us to come and bring some love to the Chicago Bears. But talking about bringing some love, Olive, what was it that sparked this idea in your head to talk about today?
Well, I have been working with neurodiverse students for 25 years. That's the first thing. I've been talking for ages. I've been running webinars to help people understand their own neurodiversity, which might be dyslexia or ADHD or something or other else. And so recently I started converting those into supporting your neurodiverse child, because lots of people have got neurodiverse children and they really haven't a clue, because nobody's helping them to understand what is going on here. And of course, they can't look at their parents, because in their parents' day, this didn't exist, most of this. I mean, if it did exist, nobody took any notice of it. And so they can't get any support from anywhere. And so it's all very much hearsay and stuff like that. And then I thought, well, actually, it's not just your children. It might be your brothers and sisters, and for that matter, it might be your parents. But that was never diagnosed in those days. So there's a whole mishmash around the family unit of people with neurodiverse type behaviours and symptoms and stuff like that most people just haven't got a clue about. And I think it's the big people who've been working in this field for some time to help educate everybody about the amazing skills that these kids and adults have got and how they can best use them.
Yeah, and I think, like, obviously part of our wider mission is to try and support as many people as we possibly can in as many different ways as we can. And what I will say before we delve into this is not just about this is not just for those parents who have children with official diagnosis, because a lot of children may not get that.
Yeah.
Like, it's still so difficult to get a diagnosis, but to, you know, finding someone who will provide you with the assessment that doesn't cost you like the price of a mortgage for a couple of
Yeah.
months is very, very challenging. So we got to just try and give as many little different techniques and tools that people can use at home. And one of the, obviously, let's get it out of the way nice and early, because one of the things a lot of people will kind of go to me where they have someone who's neurodiverse, whether it is ADHD or whatever it might be, and their child gets medicated. A lot of them, a lot of the parents will turn around and go, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God they're calm. Thank God they can focus. Thank God they're not losing everything that they own when they go to school or go to people's houses. And oh, it's like having a human being back in the house. And I would have no criticism of those parents who are relieved, because they've all been living on edge because they don't know how to manage the behaviors. They've probably tried lots of different things that haven't worked to date, and then they will get the medication, and that will have an impact, quite an immediate impact sometimes. Now, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, but it can have quite an immediate impact. But it's amazing how many young people I've worked with over the years who will turn around and say, yeah, it calmed me down, but I just don't feel like myself. I feel like I'm looking at myself from somewhere far away, and it just feels really weird. So it's a really, really tight balance.
Well, there's two sides of it, and there's two sides of so many things in life, and this is one of them. This is absolutely blatantly obvious. There is two sides of it, but there's the medication side, which is sort of understood, and at least they know what to do. We've got a shortage, but never mind, we know what to do. There's the other side of it, where you can gain skills in neurodiversity and what are some of the challenges, but there is really very little around that. You know, if you get a diagnosis, you get a piece of paper that says you've got whatever it is, but it doesn't actually help you very much in how you're going to address it. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, and so we'll acknowledge that we do have a medical model that we will say works in inverted commas. But like any medical model, whether it's for therapy, whether it's for depression or anything like that, the ideal scenario is where we empower the person to be able to manage the challenges they face for themselves without having to take medication. But sometimes we need to take medication just to help us get level, with a view to building on top of that. Jayshawn, before we kind of get into the real techniques and stuff like that, I suppose from your experience, has there been pressure at different times from doctors and professionals maybe to get your son on medication or anything like that? Or have they been a lot more accepting of him being himself over the years?
Well, that's something that from the time we got his diagnosis, even up until recent conversations we've had in our family, um, just from having friends growing up that were on different medications for different diversities, I was very firm with the first doctor and every doctor I've spoken to since, until my last appointment, that medication is not an option. Um, but then I'm 12 years down the road and I'm starting to question, well, when is it an option for my son personally? um, I don't believe medication for what I don't know if what I think he might need medication for is something that he should have medication for, because it's a very challenging decision to make. So my son does a lot of physical abuse to himself. He slaps his ears. He knees his forehead, like literally will bring his knee up and hit his head. He bangs his head on the wall. So with these type of behaviors, they don't seem to hurt him at the time it's happening. But then I think of a boxer. You get hit in the head so many times. Yeah, you may not feel that impact or the long-term effects of it right then, but by the end of your career, your brain is mush and you have other problems that arise. And that's my fear, because he's not hitting his head and crying because it hurts. He's hitting his head because there's something that's making him want to or have to do that. So we've had some conversations recently, like if he was medicated, would it reduce the amount of self-harm he does? I don't know. Is it worth the risk? Is it worth having him not be in touch with himself and feel like he's standing outside of his own self? And is it worth having him feel that way? And then it's compounded because he's nonverbal. So you introduce these type of things, but you have no way of finding out what the effect is. Through observation, there's a lot we can see, but there's more that we can't see. So when I'm having this conversation as a father of a neurodiverse son, looking at his particular behaviors, it makes it a very challenging question. But it's something that there is no right answer. And with there being no right answer, it kind of, for me, sometimes I feel like, am I being a good dad? Am I being a bad dad? Am I, what would society think? What would my peers think based off of my decisions of what I'm doing with my son? But I'm like throwing pebbles into a black hole, not really understanding where they're landing, what they're hitting, but that's my reality. So I've never been a big fan of kids being on meds unless there is a definitive, this is what the med is going after, this is what the results are going to be, and this is how the outcome or the way the child's going to feel. Unless there's definitive, hard, I guess not proof, but historical facts behind it, that by doing this with your child's particular condition, you will see this and have these side effects. If that's clear and understandable and you can weigh that out, that's great. But that's just not the situation for families like mine. So there's no right, there's no wrong answer. There's just a lot of feelings of doing the right thing, doing the wrong thing, and feelings of not knowing what the hell to do at all.
Yeah, I think it is about trying to move to a place of acceptance that you're doing the best that you can right now with the information and knowledge that you have available to you and the conditions that you're operating out of. Because, like, there can be such a backlash for parents who do decide to go down the medication route, where they nearly kind of say to their kids, look, don't tell anybody that you're taking this, because, you know, we'll get some sort of heat, or you'll get some sort of heat. But if that's the thing that allows their child to operate in the here and now in a way that there isn't self-harm, or there is less likely to be self-harm, or that there is the ability to concentrate in an education system that they have to be in, unless you're taking them out to homeschool them, which most parents aren't going to do. So we as a society, we've got to be very careful about not pointing the finger at parents who do make that decision. You're not a bad parent. You're making the best decision that you can at the time. And I've worked with many parents who will put their children on medication and then take them off after 6 months, a year, because they kind of go, we just miss who our son was, even though it was really, really challenging. And you're describing the real life experience for parents. And like, it's scary if you see your child hurting themselves, or if you see your child coming home from school and they're confidence is on the floor. They just have zero self-belief because they feel so stupid and that they are so different to everybody else. Like, no parent wants their child to experience that. So I'm not surprised that even after 12 years of going through this process, you guys are still having the conversations about, well, maybe we should be rethinking it, which is absolutely fair. And I think it's absolutely okay, because any of us can do is make the best decision for our own little family, and we can't worry about the rest of the world. We just can't. But unfortunately, you probably won't get a definitive, if your child takes this, this is going to be the outcome, because with everything, it is trial and error. So, Olive, I'm going to bring you back in because I want to start to move towards maybe some of the techniques that you have seen be very effective and useful for parents of neurodiverse children that parents could try. But I think with anything, when we try something new, a lot of times we'll try it once or twice and it might not work. And then we go, that doesn't work, and we'll bin it. When in actual fact, maybe what we need to do is just give it some more time or tweak it slightly. It's no different to the parenting courses that I run, where one of the things is when you're a parent and you're trying to do something different, it might work or it might not work, but we don't give up. We have to try something new. So start to drip feed some of those ideas that you've seen work in the past, please.
And at the moment we're talking about our children. So we're talking to parents about their children. There's another category about talking to adults, about, which might be brothers and sisters of parents. One of the things that I always go back to, which is really simple and free, is how are they breathing? Are they breathing through their noses, in and out through their nose? Or are they breathing in through their nose and out through their mouth? Or are they breathing in and out through their mouth? Now, if they're mouth breathing, they are going to be more stressed. You can look at it two ways. You could say mouth breathing is a result of being stressed, or if you carry on mouth breathing, you will be stressed. So it's either way around. And it is extraordinary how improving your breathing to be in and out through your nose will actually help people get more grounded. It'll help their nervous system relax and do loads of internal stuff that I'm not going into. But it's a really valuable thing to do. Now, it might not be the easiest of things to do to ask your child to keep their mouth shut, because that sort of might explode them. But on the other hand, if you can get them to just practice while they're watching the TV or playing on a game or whatever it is, when they're quiet, and see how you can help them realise they can get more relaxed and they can feel more comfortable in themselves. That's a really good thing. So I always start with breathing, noticing breathing, trying to help them change their breathing. And of course it does matter what they're doing at night as well when they're asleep. But to start with, just try to start with during the day. And then move on to, are they grounded? If they are particularly wobbly, then you can guarantee they're not very grounded. And as our colleague in Ireland said when he's been training what we do for years, and he said the most important thing we've ever taught the kids is to get grounded. And it's really difficult for some kids because basically they're not totally here. They sometimes don't want to be here, so they are ungrounded. They're in fight and flight permanently, and that's the best way for them to be as far as they're concerned. So bringing them into the here and now is actually a challenge for them. So that's two things, breathing and grounding. The next thing is that all of these kids, in my experience, have got really good mental images. And mental images are those pictures you hold in your head. So they've quite often got completely overwhelming mental images, which when Jay Sean was talking about his lad hitting his head, it might be, we don't know because he's not verbal, but it might be that he's got too many pictures in his head and it feels just all too much. We have lots of kids who can explain it from all sorts of different angles. You know, there was the child that I asked if she could picture cat, and her knuckles went white on the side of the chair, and she said, I've got 100 cats and they're all fighting. And so, any time somebody mentioned a generic word like that to her, if she was going to go into that much stress response, it was clearly really uncomfortable for her. So if you can try and talk to your kids about their mental images in any way they can understand, if you see people's eyes go up when they're recalling imagery or they're in their imagination, and you can just ask them questions. It's great fun talking to them about their mental images. I do it all the time. I always start off with something really simple like, when you think of a cat, what colour is it? And how many have you got? And are they playing around? Are they still or are they moving? And then you can move on to what elephants are doing or any sort of thing like that. And by the way, as a side effect for school, being able to create images like that in your mind's eye is really useful for creative writing. Because if you want to write a story, create a load of pictures in your mind's eye and then start trying to write it. That's what creative writers do. That's actually what they're trained to do. So it's nothing weird, it's quite normal. So there you are. There's about 3 things I would always start with: breathing, grounding, and getting your mental images under control, being comfortable with your own mental images.
And I think it's interesting to use the word comfortable, because I think overall that's what we're looking to do, is to try and support our young people to feel more comfortable in their own skin and inside their own heads. And I suppose, Jason, we can chat about like what all of us described there, those few techniques. They're part of the drivers for what we've tried to create with FBK University. And just so any listeners tuning in right now, you can access FBK University for free. So on the Optimal Learning State program, we've got a range of different techniques, some of the ones that Olive has mentioned already, but lots of different techniques that can help your children to practice to try and control the nervous system. So please jump on to fbkuniversity.com and sign up. It's absolutely free right now. So you might as well use the guides there to help you expand on what Olive is just saying. But talk to me, Jason, about your personal drivers when it came to getting involved with FBK and coming into this sphere of looking at how we can help neurodiversity on a wider scale. Was it because you had experienced what you'd experienced with your son? Was it because what you'd experienced growing up? Was it just that you met this phenomenal Irishman who's just amazing? That could be true too. But what was the kind of driving factors behind it for you? And what have you learned that you've implemented at home for you and your family, if anything?
Well, for me, all right, rephrase that question again. I'm sorry.
There's actually 2 questions. I'm great at throwing like 2 or 3 questions in one go. So the first question was, what was it that drove you to actually get involved in FPK in the first place? Was it just looking for something for your family? Was it just happened by chance? Or did you feel that there was something that you could contribute given your experience? And then the second part of the question is, what are some of the techniques that you've learned since you've been part of this whole process that you've maybe implemented at home, if any?
So what got me started was once a parent gets that diagnosis, there's not a minute of a waking day that parent's not thinking about, how am I going to crack this code? Because that diagnosis, we use the word diagnosis. What I hear is, you've been handed a challenge. Here is your challenge. Crack the code. and all will be good. That's what a diagnosis means to me. So I get this diagnosis every waking moment, every time you see another family in a grocery store or a parent dropping their kid off at school, and you're like, wow, look, conversation, a hug, a bye, or whatever, normal living life. You have the diagnosis, so you're trying to map out, how can I get there? How can I get my kid there? So everything is a problem to be solved. Knowing what the overall mission of FPK was, automatically, to me, I saw a door. Okay, let's open this door and see what I can learn behind this door. And parents who get this diagnosis, we open every door, every window, every crack, every sewer lid, and we're peeking everywhere trying to find something, some information that makes it make sense. So after getting involved with FPK, I saw that its mission aligned with my mission of trying to solve the problem. So you get a couple individuals with the same mission of trying to solve a problem. Then it kind of turns into a team. And once you're on a team trying to solve a problem, then there's accountability. I'm accountable to you, you're accountable to me, and together we're trying to crack the code for not just myself, but for other parents as well. So the like-minded, the mission is what brought me to FPK. What I've been able to take from what we've put together and implement into my own life wasn't necessarily from the university side of what we do, but from the FPKX side. FPKX being a documentation hub. The first problem I found out with the diagnosis was, with every diagnosis comes 1,000 pages of paperwork from the initial doctor. And then you're sent to see a dozen other therapists and other doctors. And because you're a parent and it's your first diagnosis, the first doctor, who may be freaking amazing, may have the best credentials on the entire globe, you don't believe them. I don't care what your diagnosis says. You may be right, but I don't trust you. You got to get that second opinion. So now you got seconds and thirds and fourth opinions, and everything's pointing to the same thing, but now you just have all this data. So something I've been able to take out of what we do and implement into something that we build is trying to understand the documentation, trying to come up with a way to level the playing field where I'm not staring at stacks of paper and having no understanding, because I'm not a clinical psychologist. I struggled in school, and I'm supposed to read these therapy reports from these 20-something-year-old therapists fresh out of school that have all this lingo that I can't understand anything they're saying. So I needed a way to figure it out and make it understandable to parents. So from what we've been able to build with the university, taking some of those ideas of chunking down information, coming up with a single source of truth, all those little aspects went into FPKX, which is now something that I use on a regular basis that helps me understand what I'm doing. It's also helping me on my decision on whether to medicate or not to medicate. Um, so that's a roundabout answer without giving you a direct answer. There's just, as a parent, we will never have a straight answer to any question that comes when it comes to our child, because we've never been given any straight answers when it comes to our child. The only straight answer we've got is, your child's not like other children. Well, no shit. Is your child, who's not on the spectrum, like any other child? Probably not. So that information does not help. But let me tie this into what we can do to help neurodiverse families. We always focus
Great.
on the kids. What can we do to support these kids? Maybe we should stop looking at what we can do to support these kids, because these kids can't do it by themselves. What can we do to support the parents? Because the parents are going to be the ones who have to deal with the kids. And all too many times, if we really look at the fine details of it, there is some genetics in some of these things. So my son gets a diagnosis of autism, nonverbal, has some behavioral issues. What's the likelihood that one of his parents or grandparents might be on the spectrum? Much higher. So now you have therapists and doctors telling adult who in our days we weren't diagnosed for this stuff, so we may be running around with these different neurodiversities. You're explaining potentially to a parent who might have non-diagnosed neurodiversities about their child who is neurodiverse. So it's just a big loop of broken information. So by going and trying to directly support the child is great. That needs to happen, but there needs to be a lot more focus on helping the parent. And when we're helping the parent, you got to look at your siblings, you got to look at your cousins, your sisters, your uncles, your brothers, your mothers, your grandparents. Part of that is knowing how to help and have that conversation. If you're a grandparent, don't say, "Hey, I read about this drug online. Check this out. It might help." That's not a help. If you want to help a parent, do a little bit of research about what you want to share with that parent and say, "Hey, if you're up for it, I found something that I think you might be interested in. Here's the general scope of it. Here's some of the details. Here's some of the research I did, and here's a potential way how it might help." The reason why I say that is if everybody in your family, all your friends are coming to you with, "Hey, I have this idea. I saw this on the news." I'm dealing with my son. I don't have time to do the research and figure out what all this is about. So you want to really help the child, help the parent, not by just saying, "I read this, check it out," but do the work for them. Give it to them in a way that they can easily look at it and make a decision. And do it in a way that, you know, and I'm thinking about grandparents because in my situation, it happens quite often. You get grandparents that want to tell you, "Well, in my days, this is the way we did things, and this is what I saw, and this is the way you should do things, and you've got to do this. You have to go make this appointment, or I made this appointment for you." We don't need that. Share with us your ideas. Don't tell us how we need to do things. Grandparents have a funny way of thinking they know the situation in a situation that they don't know how, and they have lots of ideas, but they don't have the bandwidth to actually step in and do the support. Just giving somebody a thought off your head is not helpful. It's more harmful than anything. So, how do you help children? You help the parents. How do you help the parents? Not by telling them what they need to do, by just asking them if they want to talk. "Hey, see, you've been struggling a little bit. You want to go grab a coffee and talk?" And let them tell you about their problems. Because if you're just shooting in the dark, assuming you know their problems, I guarantee you're wrong. Sit down, have a conversation, let them tell you. If there's something they tell you that you truly believe you have some insight in, then share your insight. If you listen to what they say and what you thought you had insight for might not apply, keep it to yourself and keep on moving, because you don't want to throw in more things into a person like me, into my life, that now I have to worry about this, and now that's going to be a bug in the back of my head, and when I should be sleeping, I might get up and then go research something that is taking away time, and now I'm more stressed out the next morning because I didn't sleep because I was studying something that somebody just put a little tidbit in my ear. I can go on and on. I have a lot of feelings about support and the way it's given. If you can't tell, there needs to be a better way, and it needs to come from a place of first communicating and then listening, not just spoon feeding or giving shovel loads of information without context behind it.
Yeah, and I think like but you're talking from lived experience, and that's really important. And I've no doubt there's many parents tuning in and listening who would say, "Oh my God, that's exactly what we've experienced as well." And it's about all of us having that bit more empathy for each other, and like you can absolutely have empathy for your relations who offer advice and kind of go, "Well, they think they're doing something right? But if we're in a stress situation, our reaction may not be, listen, thanks very much for that. I really appreciate it. But you know what would be really good for me if you just kind of went away and did the research for me, and then we could go grab a coffee, which you're paying for, and maybe do a little bit of babysitting as well, so you see exactly what it's like. Then we can have a conversation. When we're in that reactive state, in the fight or flight, like Olive mentioned before, it's we will not react necessarily, or we're less likely to react in that way and be more like, Jesus Christ, would you shove your advice right up where the sun doesn't shine? And then when everyone calms down, it's like, feeling really bad and I have to go and apologize right now, and my child is still here running around crazy, and I still have to deal with all the stuff that I have to deal with, and I'm not going to get any sleep again, and everything just feels a million times worse as it is. So I think that if we can have empathy for ourselves first and foremost, if we're in that position, but then for those grandparents, for those siblings, for those friends, let's not offer advice that isn't asked for. Let's just try and, like you said, take that bit of pressure off and go, look, I've come across this, I've done a bit of research. If you want to know more, I'm happy to talk about it. And if you do, great. And if you don't, great. It doesn't matter. You're still providing a space for somebody to talk about what's going on for them if they want to, without trying to force something down their throat. Now, Olive, I want to come to you because you are a grandparent. And like, so
I wasn't bashing you, Olive. That wasn't direct.
Before I
Say it
answer
again?
that, before I answer the question you're about to ask me,
Yeah.
we some years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, we had one of our practitioners take up the baton for educating grandparents, because apart from what Joshan said, there is a big problem with grandparents. Like when I grew up, all this neurodiversity apparently didn't exist. I mean, you might say it was all hidden, but nobody talked about it. And it's only because of the work I've done that I talk so much about it. But the average grandparent who's the same age as me has not got a clue, and they can set off real aggravation with their own children to say, you're not doing it right. You ought to be doing this, you ought to be doing that. And so, to be quite honest, with my grandchildren, I tend to keep my mouth shut until asked to on anything, basically. And so, because I'm not living it, but then I understand that. Whereas the average grandparent, I'm not putting them down, will go, it wasn't like that in my day, that you must be doing it wrong. But the life has moved on. I mean, I talk like this about, I talk about mental imagery nearly all the time because it's my sort of specialist subject. And back in the day when I was little, I remember the first black and white TV arriving in our house. I remember the first colour TV. I remember the internet arriving and all these videos and all that sort of stuff. We weren't programmed when I was a kid to be highly visual, whereas we have we have given kids all these visual type things that they really enjoy, and we are now having the results of that is that they're staying remarkably visual, we are remarkably creative and curious and all the other really good stuff, but we don't know how to educate them in school with that skill set. So now you can get back to your question, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. I'm glad you jumped in there with that. So I suppose the question is, like you had mentioned earlier on about, like, and it's a good segue from where Jay Sean went. So it is about the family and the extended family and friends. So what are some of the elements you want to bring in around the neurodiverse family and the extended family and friends, and how they can be supported as well?
I think it's really difficult for them because of the lack of knowledge. I mean, one thing I should say is I don't set out to fix anybody. I set out to enable them and their families to have strategies that work better for them. Because one of the real problems I have is that these kids are born with amazing strengths. They are getting further developed by the environment they're in, like I was saying about the very visual environment they're in. So they can, if they can manage to grow up doing what they feel is what they really are interested in, I think that's one of the biggest things. And maybe going to school, maybe not, is tough to fulfill that. I was talking to somebody today on a webinar for one of the recovery colleges in the UK, and they were saying, but you can't change all this in education. And I go, well, if we don't start changing this in education, we're going to have a much bigger problem on our hands. And so we better take seriously that we have got visual children, we have created them, and we now have to educate them in a way that actually works for them. And the uncles and the brothers and everybody else just need a better understanding of these children that are coming on the planet. And the more people we can encourage to, I say to kids, when it's the children that's going to be forcing this change to actually happen eventually. It's not going to be us, actually. It's going to be the kids that are going to make this happen. And I want to give them as smooth a road as possible.
Yeah, and I think, part of the challenge then comes in that, going back to the parent, like the parent doesn't have the time to be educating the other people because they're the ones who are stuck in the middle of it. So it's a really difficult process. And I suppose maybe it is up to us to try and create the resources and make them easily available for parents, grandparents, siblings, whatever, whoever's involved in bringing up the child or engaging with the child, that makes the content easy to digest. Because we don't need grandparents or siblings or friends becoming neuroscientific experts. That's not what we need to do. But sometimes it can feel that daunting when you're faced with all this information. And because we have so much information at our fingertips, it's like, well, what do we know is actually the right thing to do? So it's about trying to present that information in a way that is easily digestible, but is also factual and research based, and that is going to support in a very simplified way. And definitely that's something, one of the main drivers for FPK University is to simplify things. And even for you, Olive, with Empowering Learning, Empowering Learning simplifies spelling and maths and handwriting and reading. It literally does.
Totally. And I think I'll come back to that if I can remember it. But observing the child. In the last 6 months we started offering techniques to preschoolers, and I say to them, start observing the children, watch what they are doing. Are they, when they're telling you a story, which they'll probably be telling you about what happened at the weekend, are they looking up into their pictures, or are they down here feeling really bad? I said that on today's webinar earlier today, and one man said, all kids are looking down all the time. They're all on their phones, or they're not on their phones, but they're looking down all the time. They're stuck in their emotions. They are, as another one, stuck in their emotions. And what we've got to do is get them up to think about what possibilities there are. And now, what did you actually ask me?
No, before I come to that, but that's where actually I am very excited with the glasses becoming the go-to technology rather than the phones, because we will be looking up more, because it'll be glasses that we'll be using instead of the phones. But I think what I was talking about was just the simplification of these processes that support people. And like when I explain empowering learning to anybody, be it a teacher, be it a parent, be it a student, they will always give me that look of it can't be that simple,
Yeah,
but it is.
yeah.
Like it really is. And was that one of your drivers initially? Was it to make it simple, or was it just it seemed that simple to you when you were coming up with it?
I'll perhaps have to recap on how I came up with it in the first place. I was doing my NLP, that's Neuro-Linguistic Programming training, and in 10 minutes I was shown 6 people standing on the stage who were just people dragged up out of the audience and asked if they could spell relatively difficult words, like giraffe, for example. The people who could spell really well looked up and saw the word. The people who couldn't looked at the floor and looked embarrassed because they couldn't remember how many R's and how many F's. And so I went, this is ridiculous. I went at the tea break, I went round and asked people, and sure enough, the people who were like secretaries, who were really good at literacy, could do it easily. And people like me never even thought of doing it. And so I walked into my local special needs school on the Monday morning and said, have you got any kids who can't spell? And they went, you've got hundreds, which ones do you want? And so I worked with them, and they were astounding. If you can teach in special needs, you can teach anywhere. And they changed their experience with words so quickly, just by knowing that if they were looking up and seeing the word, they were fine. Now, since then, I've done loads of research on why this works, and the topic is called, now brace yourself, orthographic mapping. And if you orthographically map a word, you encode in your brain 3 things: what the word looks like, what it sounds like, and what it means. And it goes into a special place in the back of your brain. And every child I have ever met who is diagnosed dyslexic or just can't spell or read is not reliably doing orthographic mapping. And it takes 5 minutes to check out whether they're doing it. And when they're not, I teach them. And I've got better and better over the years at teaching them. And I've got more research behind it. But the kids have got to want to do it. And that's for dyslexia. And the same is true for dyscalculia, because they're not visualising numbers. And when we come on to ADHD, I have a really big worry that actually there's a huge overlap between dyslexia and ADHD. And the kids are so stressed having poor literacy, they may actually be looking as if they've got ADHD, which is a possibility. I mean, it's something like 50-60%, something like that overlap. And so that can't be a mistake, that there must be a connection there. And all of these kids, every single child I have ever met, is normally really good at pictures in their head. So they've got masses of pictures in their head, sometimes too many, but they have no problem with those. They just have never learned to visualise words and numbers. And that's a teaching problem, I'm afraid to say, because we're not teaching the teachers. Sorry.
How can a parent who might be listening to this, how can they find out if their child is using that orthographic mapping technique?
And basically, most parents are involved in some sort of spelling test with their kids. And you go, are we looking at the paper? I mean, we've got a list of words down here. Are we looking at the paper? No, we don't want to be doing that. Copy every word onto a post-it and do one word at a time, because they don't want to have words that don't belong together orthographically mapped. So if you've got table and elephant, you don't want them orthographically mapped in the same place. So you do one word at a time and you ask them to spell it, and preferably get them to spell it out loud. Alternatively, you can get them to write it down, but don't get them to look down when they're writing. Some children, I'll give you a little demonstration, some children write with their nose and their pen more or less on the piece of paper. and they are never going to orthographically map then. So what we do is we go, right, I've written a word, like picture a cat. I've written the word cat on this piece of paper, hold it up so they can see it, and then imagine they've got CAT written along the side of the cat, and then they can spell it forwards, and then they can change the colour of the letters and spell it in reverse order. That's roughly how we teach them. And there's all sorts of tricks around that, like only teach noun words to start with, do not teach non-nouns, because there's a neurological reason for that, which I'm not going to go into, but it's really foolish to teach high frequency words before they've got nouns. And we can now understand an awful lot about teaching children who, just by associating pictures with words, stuck up around the walls of the house or the bedroom or whatever, just a picture of a cat with COT written on it, a picture of a dog with DOG written on it. Simple, what they call CBC words. So start off with simple words that they can grasp and they can start associating. When you ask them to picture a cat, they know what colour the cat is they've got in their head. It's like ginger and white or something. So they can just as easily visualise cats with COT written along the side of it. And that's how we start teaching them. And it's really simple. People can come on the FBK University and find out how to do it. They can come on some of my free webinars to find out what this is all about. And it isn't being taught in school because it isn't specifically in the national curriculum. But it's part of the national curriculum. It's just a how-to.
And that's what we're trying to do, is give people access to that through your webinars, through FBK University. So please do sign up for both, because you will get free access to both, and it makes a huge difference to reinforce what you've just described, Olive. And we have the steps broken down very simply. So I want to take this moment to say thank you, Olive, for creating the Empowering Learning Programme. Like, genuinely, it has absolutely had such a major impact on my family's life, never mind my working life and the young people that I've worked with, but my own family's life. So if we were standing together now, I'd be giving you a big hug of thank you, because it takes visionary people who are not willing to just accept the status quo and who are willing to try different ways. And it's the exact same way I feel about Jayshawn. Jayshawn's way of going and about developing things is not the typical way that most people go, and I love people like that, and I love surrounding myself with people like that. So I feel very privileged to, on my screen, be sitting in the middle of you two, but on a daily basis have both of you in my lives, just inspiring me, but having an impact on the work that I do and my family life. So thank you both. In fact, if I could hug you both, I would. You might not want it, but that's just the way it is. That's okay. That's okay. Olive, I'll come back to you for some final thoughts. But Jayshawn, I want to come to you. Have you any final thoughts from the conversation that we've had today, and any maybe little tidbits of advice that you might give to other parents out there?
Absolutely. All right. So my final thought for the day. So we touched on a lot, but I guess the overall theme of this conversation is, how can we support those with neurodiversities, not just the children, but the parents as well. We're leading into a holiday weekend. We've got Thanksgiving coming up. And I'll share two little stories here. So in our family, we do Thanksgiving, me, my wife, and my son. We don't go visit anybody. We don't go hang out with anybody. People are always welcome here, but we don't go anywhere. Reason being, and this is probably common in most people's position like mine. So when you have a child with neurodiversities, even one as extreme as mine, who has autism, who's nonverbal, who has some behavioral issues, where you can really support families, especially around the holidays, is I've given up on my family. Reason why? They know the struggles my son has. And whether it's a birthday party, whether it's a Thanksgiving dinner, whether it's come over for Christmas, If you're going to invite a family member that you know has a child with neurodiversities, the number one thing you can do is prepare your house. Make it a place where they feel comfortable to come. My family knows the elopement risk of my son, but they want us to come and they want us to come hang out, but they don't put any safeguards up in place for us. So we don't show up. They take it personal because we don't show up. We take it personal because they don't have the mental capacity to think about, hey, maybe we should do something so it's easy for them. Nobody in my situation likes to show up at a family event and spend the whole time chasing their child around and protecting your items, protecting your lamp, protecting your trinkets. Our houses are set up so that we know what's available to be touched. If you invite family members over who have kids with neurodiversities or older adults that they're bringing over with neurodiversities, and you want them to come around and you want to support them, support them. Do things around your house that makes it easy for them. Otherwise, at some point, families like mine feel like we're just not welcome or it's too big of a hassle for you to make accommodations for us. So then we end up feeling secluded and left out and we don't even participate. So one of the biggest things you can do, especially around the holidays, is if you want to support families with neurodiversities, truly support them. Don't just make it an invite. Hey, if you're coming over, what can I do to make life easy for you so your child, your son or your daughter, should I have a lock on the back gate? Is there any types of things that they're more apt to play with that you would prefer for me to put up? Don't just invite them, set them up for success. And too many families like mine fall into the same boat year after year, year after year, where we're not set up for success. And now 12 years later, we don't get invited to certain birthday parties. Why? Because they already, oh, that family's gonna come over and they're gonna be running around and they're just, it's a scene when they come around, so it's easier not to have them around, so you stop getting invites and stuff like that. Um, I'm okay with that. We don't worry about it. We're our own family, but other families might take it a different way. So if you really want to support your friends, your families, your daughters, anyone you know with neurodiversities around the holiday season, be thoughtful. Ask them what they need, ask them what their accommodations are, try to accommodate them and do what you can to make them feel comfortable in your place. Or if you're going to their place, understand that their place is designed in a way that's cohesive for their child and navigate in a way that respects what they've built at home for their child. That would be my closing message. It might not have much to do with what we're talking about, but it's about supporting. And I strongly suggest if you want to have good relationships with your families who have neurodiversities within their own families, support them by being thoughtful. And that's it.
Such a powerful statement. Absolutely powerful. Thanks so much, Jason. And Olive, what final thoughts do you have?
Well, we don't really have Thanksgiving yet. We do Christmas, so I'm going to pass on the giving thanks. But the thing I would say is that these children are astonishing. They are what the planet needs. It's for us to work out how that's going to work out and how that can enable them to be the successful people they want to be, because deep inside they want to be unbelievably successful people. And there is a guy called Dr. Stuart Shanker, who I'll give you a quote of. He said, I love this quote, "See a child differently and you will see a different child." So see their strengths and you will see a different child. You know, if you've got somebody coming around in the holiday season, for example, who is absolutely addicted to Lego, give them the best opportunity to play with Lego all afternoon and don't care what the rest of the relatives say. I always remember when my kids were little, I used to ask them what they wanted for Christmas lunch, because this was in the days when we ate meat, but we don't anymore. But, you know, we would be having turkey, and I said, you can have whatever you like, I don't mind, I'll cook it. And it was toad in the hole. for a couple of years. And that, as far as I was concerned, that was absolutely fine. It was their choice. It was their celebration day. There you go.
Brilliant. I love that. And I just want to finish off by just, I suppose, in some ways echoing what you're both saying, but we spend so much time trying to look outwards and try and fix things. And it's easier for us to look outwards to try and fix things or find things that need fixing. But sometimes, in fact, all the time, the most important thing to do is look inward and go, well, what can I change so that I'm making the world around me a little bit easier for those who need the world to be made a little bit easier for them. Easier said than done, because we have to look and be vulnerable with ourselves and maybe acknowledge some of the things that we don't do as well as we'd like to do. But yeah, the more we do that, the better chance we have of helping those around us who need our help. And on that note, we will finish this week's episode. This has been a really, really strong, powerful effort, an episode. And I want to say thank you all for joining us as we sign it. And we will be back next week with episode 20 of the Future Proof Knowledge podcast.
FPK, FPK, Future Proof Knowledge Podcast. Mind unlocked. With every episode we cast real talk, real tools, wisdom on the fly. Tune in, geek out, reach for the sky. FPK, FPK, Future Proof Knowledge Podcast.